Hello and welcome to Runkle of the Bailey. My name is Ian Runkle. I'm a Canadian criminal defense and firearms lawyer. Today I want to talk about Cedar the goat, and this is a story that's got a lot of people very, very angry. When I first started looking into this, I thought it was one of those too bad to be true stories because the details are just kind of heart-wrenching. So a brief synopsis here, and I'll note I'm getting this from the complaint, I'm getting this from news articles, I'm getting this from the Warrant, various other places. So this little girl, aged 9 at the time, she gets this goat, and this goat is part of the 4-H program. So she's going to raise this goat, and eventually it's going to go to auction, and it's going to be slaughtered, and the meat will go to the buyer. So that's the plan. The problem is that this plan goes awry because the girl falls in love with the goat. She names the goat, which is of course a dangerous thing to do when you're talking about a meat animal and a little girl. She plays with the goat. She bonds with the goat. Initially, apparently, she didn't like the goat, but she just kind of formed a connection. She really fell in love with this goat. And that may be in part because she was at a vulnerable time in her life. During that same year, she lost 3 grandparents. So this goat may have had a sort of special role in dealing with that. At any rate, she loves this goat. And so they go, and this goat is going off to the auction, and she can't do it. She says, I can't sell this goat. And she tells the auction, like the fair that's going to auction this goat off, before the auction happens. She says, I can't do it. We can't sell the goat. Deal's off. And the fair says, no, you're not allowed to back out. You're here for once the goat is here, you're not allowed to back out. So they conduct the auction anyway, and the goat goes for a little over $900. Now, the Shasta Fair Association, that's the fair that's running this, they get a cut of about 7% of that, which is $63.14. So that's sort of how much that fair would make out of this. Now, the buyer in this happens by chance to be a state senator, and he is buying this goat, and his plan is he's going to donate the meat to a 4-H barbecue. Now, when the family says, we're backing out on this, the auction happens anyway, and eventually they say, we can't do it, and they leave with the goat. So they take the goat, and so the goat is gone initially. That goat gets taken off to a farm where it's going to stay, and in the meantime, the mother, on behalf of the kid, is trying to engage in some negotiations. She's trying to say, listen, can we do something other than killing this goat? My daughter has fallen in love with this. Please, if there's any way you can make this happen, we'd like to find another solution. So she offers to pay that commission that the fair would have gotten. And she offers to pay any costs that have been accrued. She offers to pay the full amount. Basically, she's saying, like, if money is the issue, I will solve this. I will spring for that. She also reaches out to the senator, and I'm going to be clear here. A lot of the news reports have tried to paint the senator as a villain here, and he really isn't, because when he gets when they reach out to him, he says, you know what? I'm okay with that. I'm cool with this plan. Now, the girl isn't going to keep the goat. That's not sort of the ultimate plan. What they were doing is they were trying to work out an arrangement for this goat to go to a secondary place. And that is basically an organization that deals with fire prevention. So the goat would, instead of being slaughtered for meat, would have gone off and basically been sent out into areas of overgrowth in order to eat down that overgrowth and to help prevent fires. And that, of course, would have meant the goat lives kind of a happy goat life for the rest of its days. So that was kind of the goal. But the Fair Association says no. The Fair Association says, we insist that this go through. And the reason why they say they insist is because they say, listen, this is to teach your daughter responsibility, amongst some other things. They're saying, this is an important part of our program. This is an important sort of aspect to things. And it's, so their comments to that really make it sound like they're not so much interested in the goat, but they're interested in the kind of integrity of the process. And they say that one of the quotes here, and this is a quote reported by Reason.com. They say, "Please understand the fair industry is set up to teach our youth responsibility and for the future generations of ranchers and farmers to learn the process and effort it takes to raise quality meat. Making an exception for you will only teach our youth that they do not have to abide by the rules that are set up for all participants." So this is kind of worrying, right? Because we're talking about a contract law situation. And one of the things contract law does not really typically cover is teaching responsibility. So this is a bit of an issue here. Now, ultimately, what happens is that they get a complaint, and the complaint comes in through, interestingly, not the fair and not actually, not the sort of ostensible buyer, which was the senator. It comes in through a third party, and that third party is the person who is going to get the meat, the people who are running this auction or running this this barbecue. They seem to call the police and say, "Hey, we were supposed to get a goat. Where's our goat?" And so as a result of this, the police get a warrant, and this warrant is itself a little funky, and we'll talk about that. But because they get this warrant, the police travel over to where they think the goat is. They get a warrant for a place called Bleeding Hearts Farm and Sanctuary. And they have a warrant to go and search that place for the goat. So they go to that place and they search, and no goat, because the goat was never there. So instead, somehow they find out that the goat is at a different place entirely, and they travel to that other place. Now, they don't have a warrant for that location, but they say, and this is from their statement of defense, they say, "We got consent. We didn't need a warrant for this because we had permission." Now, I'm going to wonder about how valid that consent was, because if they're showing up, they're a bunch of angry police officers who've traveled over 500 miles to get there, and they're saying, you know, "We've got a warrant for this other place." I'm wondering if that place knew that they had the right to refuse to turn over the goat, or if they didn't. So afterwards, the goat gets taken back, and instead of being sort of held to figure all this out, it's instead returned to the fair, and it is presumably slaughtered. We don't know for certain, but we presume that this goat has been slaughtered. All right, so that's our basic background. Now we got to get into some law, and we're going to get into reviewing some of the details and some of the things, because there's a lot of different wrinkles and twists and turns on this one. And a lot of people have been reporting on this one and sort of getting it kind of right. And I want to try to do as much as I can to explain this one in some detail, because this is a story that, again, a lot of people are angry about. Now, I said before that I thought that this was one of those too bad to be true stories, because a lot of these details seem to be almost perfect for just sort of creating outrage. And in fact, I thought it was likely to be that even more so when I saw who the lawyers for the plaintiff are, which is an organization advancing law for animals. So I thought, surely, you know, this can't be as cut and dried as it looks like. And there are some wrinkles, but I will tell you, it seems to be as bad or possibly worse than has been reported. So we're going to talk about that. I'll also just note here, Advancing Law for Animals is a nonprofit. They're a legal nonprofit, and the budgets for those are typically kind of like, hey, let's shake out the couch cushions and see if there's any coins underneath. So if you watch this and you feel like, hey, I'm really on Team Cedar the goat and Team Little Girl, then you might want to check. I'm going to leave a link in the description below where you can go if you want to, you know, throw them some money, because again, these sorts of organizations really operate on a razor thin budget. And yeah. All right. So now that we've got that, let's go on and talk about some elements of California law. Now, I suspect that some of you are saying what the Shasta Fair Association seems to have said, which is, listen, this little girl made an agreement and in fact made a contract. She said she was going to sell this goat at auction. She's got to go through with it. However, that's not the law. That's not what the law says in California. In fact, we're looking at California Family Code section 6710, which says, except as otherwise provided by statute, a contract of a minor may be disaffirmed by the minor before majority or within a reasonable time afterwards, or, in the case of the minor's death within that period, by the minor's heirs or personal representative. And you might be thinking, wait, is this an unusual law? And I can say it's not. A lot of places have laws just like this. They provide for the ability of minors to back out of a contract. So in California, a minor who signs a contract can back out of it for any reason or no reason whatsoever. They can say, hey, I don't feel like doing this. Or even, hey, it would be to my advantage to not be in this contract. And you might think that that's a bad thing, except that this provides a lot of protection for minors. This is probably the reason why your bank is not out at your kid's high school trying to sign them up for a high interest loan. Otherwise, kids could get into all sorts of binding agreements that would really ruin their lives before they got started. So if somebody goes up to your kid and signs them up for a high interest credit card, the kid can just say, don't want to do that anymore, and they're out. So that is great. The flip side of that is that typically this means that most people don't want to get into contracts with minors, because if the minor can back out if it's to the advantage of the minor to do so, then that person doesn't get any of the benefits of the contract, really. In fact, the person who signs it with the minor is fully bound, whereas the minor is not bound at all. They can just back out. So there are some restrictions and limitations to this, and it's important to consider those and whether they'd apply in this situation. So one of those limitations is this section right here, 6712. And this provides that a contract, otherwise valid, entered into during minority, may not be disaffirmed on that ground, either during the actual minority of the person entering into the contract or at any time thereafter. So it cancels that disaffirmation power if all of the following requirements are met. And basically this section, when you look at the requirements, section A is the contract is to pay for the reasonable value of things necessary for the support of the minor or the minor's family. Section C is the contract is entered into by the minor when not under the care of a parent or guardian able to provide for the minor or the minor's family. So this provides that perhaps a minor who's living on their own, or somebody who's a minor whose parents are just unable to provide for them for whatever reason, can enter into contracts for things necessary for their support. So that's things like food, shelter, heating, those kinds of things. But, probably not something like a credit card or something like that. So this allows for minors who might be in some trouble to sign binding contracts to get things that they need. So it kind of protects people who might provide things that the minor needs in those situations. There's another section that is really kind of interesting because, California, Hollywood, all of that stuff. There's a way for minors to sign binding contracts relating to the film industry and selling rights to, like, if they write a book or something like that. But those kind of contracts have to be taken before a court, and they're limited to those kinds of creative endeavors. So that doesn't apply here either. There's also a section, 6713, that says if before the contract of a minor is disaffirmed, goods the minor has sold are transferred to another purchaser who bought them in good faith for value and without notice of the transfer's defective title, the minor cannot recover the goods from an innocent purchaser. So this is protecting sort of a third party, innocent, sort of bona fide purchaser for value, which is what the law considers highest end. Now, importantly, this little girl owned this goat. That's required by the fair rules. So this was her goat, and it's her agreement to sell the goat. So what we have from the complaint, and again, I'm relying on the complaint. I have no way of verifying this. We'll see which of these facts are sort of borne out. But right now, this is just sort of reporting on the complaint and sort of the other available details. But it doesn't appear that there was that third-party transfer here because the girl, first of all, disaffirmed this before the auction. And second of all, she took the goat with her. like that goat left. So once she's got the goat, seems like it's her goat. She's entitled to say, listen, I don't want to sell the goat. And the law is, in this case, on her side. The law says that that is fully within her power, that she is entitled to back out of this kind of agreement for, again, any reason or no reason whatsoever. So even if you don't agree with the notion, like, even if you're saying like, hey, listen, I think it would be good for her to learn responsibility. I don't think that she should back out of this. I don't think she should be able to back out of this. The law allows her to do it. And even if her reason was, you know what, I specifically don't like these people, in particular, still fine. This is the danger of entering into contracts with minors. And again, these clauses are really common. There's lots of different places have rules just like this. So that's kind of our first issue. And so once that happens, we get into some really interesting legal questions, because from the complaint, what we've heard is that she said she was backing out of this deal before the auction actually takes place. So at that point, no more contract. The Fair Association has no rights to the goat and no rights to act sort of with regards to the goat. But then they hold an auction. And at this point, it's not their goat to auction, which is kind of like if I decide to have an auction and sell you my neighbor's car without my neighbor knowing or being okay with it. Well, or in fact, in a case like this, with my neighbor actively being opposed to it. There's words for that, and they're not good words. So this is the kind of thing that raises some serious legal peril, I think. And if the complaint actually, if all of these facts are made out, there are some real problems that could end up with some real issues for some of these people, especially because this case has now gotten national and, in fact, international attention. Because, hi, I'm Canadian, so the attention is officially international because I'm making a video about it. So, I would not want to be in their shoes right now, because I wouldn't like the notion being out there that I sold a goat that I didn't have any rights to. So that's a really big problem. And the other thing is that California recognizes a concept called efficient breach. And what that means is that sometimes it might actually be the best thing to do to break a contract. And because of that, typically the sorts of damages you can get for contracts, I mean, they're going to be monetary, but you're going to get sort of expectation damages and so forth. And here we have a situation where the mother was actively basically promising to make them whole, to say, I'll cover whatever costs you incurred. I'll cover all of these things. Just we need to keep the goat. And I'm just going to say, you're going to be in a really bad legal spot if you're in a lawsuit trying to explain why you weren't okay with taking the money, especially because this isn't a case where you're going to get specific performance. And I'll explain what that means. So normally when you make a contract, the presumption is that the remedy for somebody breaching it is going to be money and not the actual thing. So let's say I call up a steelworks and I am going to order 1,000 pounds of steel, just general steel of a particular grade and whatever else. And so I'm going to pay a particular price and so forth. And later that steelworks decides, we're not going to do it. Sorry, don't feel like it. I can sue them and I can possibly get the value of what I would have gained by that contract. But I typically can't actually force them to deliver the steel. I'd get the money and then I have to buy the steel somewhere else. That's because I'm not entitled to specific performance. And the reason why is, that's kind of presumed. The only circumstances where you can get specific performance are situations where you're buying something that is kind of special or unique. And what I mean by that is, if I'm buying a Civic, or a car, then I'm probably not going to be able to get specific performance. But if this particular car that I'm buying was like used, was driven by James Bond in one of the James Bond movies, now this is a unique car, right? I can't swap in another car. There's only one of those. And so I might be able to get specific performance to get that car specifically given to me. So that's one thing there. Um, there's other examples in terms of artworks. Land can sometimes result in specific performance because, if there's a particular property, it might have qualities that no other property has. And so that can make it unique. Particular gemstones, that kind of thing. However, in this case, we're talking about a goat. And goats are not typically all that unique. But importantly, although this goat was unique and special to this little girl, it's not going to be unique and special to the purchaser, particularly because, as the complaint lays out, the agreement that the Fair Association has with bidders says that the bidders aren't actually entitled to the goat. They don't get the goat. They get the meat from the goat. And at that point, you're talking about just goat meat and we can assume it's good quality goat meat, but you can get good quality goat meat at other places. And this is something that is replaceable on the market. I just can't see an argument for specific performance of just general goat meat, unless somehow you're going to argue that this goat meat has specific value to you because of it contains the suffering of this little girl. And at this point, I honestly wouldn't be that surprised if that was the argument. So yeah, specific performance is off the table. There's also some issues with respect to the warrant. And I mention this because several of the claims in the lawsuit are for violations of rights with respect to search and seizure. So let's have a look at this warrant. And I want to talk about the warrant. It's got some really interesting problems, I'll say. And what I mean by problems is, so they go and, as I mentioned, they go to this one place that is named on the warrant, search for the goat, no goat. And then they go to another place and they seize the goat. At which point the question is, are they seizing this goat under the warrant when they're seizing it at a place that isn't listed on the warrant? I think that might be a tough argument. At that point, they're just taking the goat, and this is a goat that is under legal dispute. So it's not really up to the police at that point to just decide who it goes to. But this warrant is also weird for some other reasons. So I'll just bring up the warrant here. All right, and I've blocked out some things like signatures and names and so forth, because really we want to know what's in the warrant, but I don't really want to sort of violate anybody's privacy or have anybody trying to sign court documents as a police officer or a magistrate. So we've got the detective Jeremy Ashby, who swears under penalty of perjury that the facts expressed to him in this search warrant are accurate. And we're going to talk about some of these facts because this is probably what was told to the officer. And we can see that there's going to be a difference here between what the officer hears and what's in the complaint. And we can sort of judge that a little bit based on sort of remoteness of the information here. All right, so the first thing is that the reason why they want to do this is that they're saying that the property was stolen or embezzled. Now, we've already done a bit of legal analysis to conclude that it doesn't seem that the property was stolen. It was her goat. So that's a problem here. And so now we can skip through. There's a whole bunch of other sections that might apply. And so they are commanded to search the Bleeding Hearts Farm and Sanctuary. And there's a little bit of a description, but I've blocked out some details that would let you track that place down because they seem to want their privacy. And this allows them to search the residence, including all rooms, attics, basements, and other parts therein, the surrounding grounds, and any garages, sheds, storage rooms, and outbuildings of any kind large enough to accommodate a small goat. That's going to be most outbuildings and so forth. Most people aren't building an outbuilding that is too small to stash a goat in. All right. So I've skipped over. You can see that I blacked out a number of the pictures. They're searching for one white and brown colored boar type goat named Cedar. having a purple-colored ear tag marked Shasta District Fair, SDF 367, and a yellow-colored breeder ID tag marked, and I blanked that out because I don't know if that tag leads back to something. And if you find the same or any part thereof, to hold such property in your possession under California Penal Code 1536, or in the alternative, to institute federal or state asset forfeiture proceedings against any and all assets seized during the execution of the search warrant and believed to be derived from narcotics trafficking activity. And so California Penal Code 1536 requires them to hold the property until a magistrate determines what's going to be done with it, so that there's some due process there where you can say, hey, you took my property. You shouldn't have taken my property. That's my property. And that would have allowed this little girl with counsel to go in and say, hey, I'm actually the rightful owner of the goat, and do that whole legal analysis that we've just done. Unfortunately, they didn't do that. They returned the goat to the fair, and as far as we can tell, the goat has been killed. Now, this is where this warrant gets even weirder, because I already mentioned the aspects of, does the warrant even apply if they're seizing the goat from another place? But things get really weird, because now we go into the statement of probable cause. And so this is the affidavit of the detective. And it notes, and we're going to have some snarky things to say about this one, so we're just going to go through it. But, he says that the following facts are true and that there's probable cause to believe that there's a reason to search, essentially. Now, it's going to go through and talk about the experience. It says, your affiant became a sworn peace officer in December of 2016. Your affiant possesses an intermediate post certificate through the California Peace Officer Standards and Training. Your affiant has completed 1,553 training hours through the California Peace Officer Standard and Training, which included the basic Post Police Academy, and holds a Bachelor of Arts degree from Simpson University. So they're laying out his credentials. Your affiant has also completed the 80-hour Robert Presley Institute of Criminal Investigations, ICI Investigators Core course. And here's where I'm going to get a little bit snarky. Your affiant has been conducting investigations involving burglaries, grand and petty thefts, fraud, identity thefts, stolen vehicles, narcotics, embezzlement, robberies, homicides, an R word that YouTube doesn't like, child, a word that YouTube doesn't like, felony batteries, traffic collisions, and other related crimes for the past 5 years. So clearly, this goat theft is now the pinnacle of this officer's career. And it was very important that we take this officer away from dealing with all of those other things to get this goat. I mean, that's an efficient use of taxpayer dollars, right? We're going to get this goat. And, who cares about those burglaries and robberies and other things? We're going to get us a goat. Tax dollars at work, folks. All right. So, narrative of probable cause. And it actually tells us who reported this. So on Friday, July 8th, 2022, Kathy Muse reported a livestock theft to the Shasta County Sheriff's Office. According to Muse, Brian Dahl, that's the senator, purchasing, I'm thinking that's supposed to be purchased, a goat for auction at the Shasta District Fair livestock auction for $902, which of course he didn't, because the fair didn't actually have the right to sell that goat, and donated the animal to Muse for the 4-H and FFA community barbecue. Now, again, the parents were saying, whoa, we don't want to do this. The kid was saying we don't want to do this. So there's some real problems with this narrative, but you wonder how much of this got communicated down the line. The seller of the auction goat, blank, took the goat from the fairgrounds after the sale was finalized to prevent the animal from being slaughtered by the new owner. All right, now I did manage to find a file photo of Kathy Muse online. Here it is. I'm kidding, of course, but yeah, this is not a great look for the 4-H community barbecue here. In fact, I think this is going to be a PR disaster for a lot of people. And it is worth noting that part of the motivation appears from the news reports to be PR problems, in the sense that it looks like part of the reason to push through with the police may have been, and again, we're going to have to see what comes out, but this is just what's been reported by some of the news outlets, is bad PR that the fair auction was getting, because people were saying, "You're doing what to this kid's goat?" And that's gonna be real interesting when we start seeing all of that information. Again, at this point, I'm just relying on sort of the complaint and other news reports. I don't know what the final determination will be, but this is looking real bad. And this is going to be a PR disaster for a lot of people. Even if they ultimately win, it's a PR disaster for a lot of people. So, so they drove the goat to an animal sanctuary, Bleeding Hearts Farm and Sanctuary, which turns out not to be correct, to hide the animal from the new owner. Bleeding Hearts, and the complaint indicates that the reason why the goat was moved out away from their property wasn't because they were trying to hide it. It was just because they don't have a farm to keep the goat on. So Bleeding Hearts Farm created an Instagram post admitting the goat was in their custody and asking the Shasta District Fairgrounds to pardon the goat from being slaughtered. In the Instagram post, it states, her mother has tried everything she possibly could to keep the goat, safe, has even driven him hours away to find a new home, knowing there may have been fees involved, but had no idea that it could be a felony. I don't think it's a felony, folks, but yeah. And really, do you really want to prosecute in this case? Is this really top of our priority list? Refer to attachment A, Bleeding Hearts Farm Instagram post for additional details. So this post that was made pleading to spare this goat was used as evidence to kill the goat. That's kind of messed up. Just going to say it. It's kind of messed up. The Shasta District Fairgrounds provided a letter sent to them by the mother in which she admits she intentionally took the goat from the fairgrounds. Refer to attachment B, letter B from the Shasta District Fairgrounds for additional details. All right, we're going to look at those letters, and then we'll come back to this stuff that is underneath, because this stuff underneath is weird. It's just weird. So, all right, evidence sought. One white and brown colored boar-type goat named Cedar. We knew that. Locations, it's the same locations. There were some pictures of the location. They conclude that the search is necessary and they think it's at the above location. And so here is the Instagram post, and I blocked out some stuff just to, try to sort of keep some of this, keep people from hassling the fairgrounds and so forth. Let this go through the court process, people. That's what's going on. But they note that Senator Brian Dahl has no problem allowing the girl to keep her goat and donate him back to her care. The fairgrounds pardoned him for slaughter and dropped charges. They're saying they desperately need the community to try to keep this goat from being killed. So, yeah. And then here's this letter. And this letter is... well, we're just going to read it because it's kind of heartbreaking. So, dear Shasta County Fair Manager, I am the mom who took my daughter's goat from the fairgrounds and wanted to explain myself and look for solutions with you. If we can't come up with any other solution, I will bring the goat back for slaughter. So she says, hey, let's have a dialogue first. And they skipped the dialogue and went to the police instead. My daughter is a 9-year-old, and like most little girls, she wants a horse someday. We hope to have land in the near future and hope she gets a chance to have a horse. We joined 4-H for the opportunity for her to learn how to care for livestock, as well as it being a great opportunity for her to learn about where food comes from and the effort it takes to raise quality meat products. Our 4-H leader said that we could keep the goat on his property since we live in a residential neighborhood and couldn't keep it at ours. So they were never able to keep this goat on their property. Every afternoon since the beginning of April, she fed her goat and walked it and practiced bracing. At first, the goat ran away from her, and she didn't like her goat. A few months later, he was running up to the gate to see her, and she was walking him around like a dog. I wouldn't have signed her up for the project if I thought she'd get attached. I thought the goal was to feed the goat, and that was about it. I didn't know that showmanship was a part of 4-H until she got her goat and started working with it. It was that daily interaction that created a bond that I wasn't expecting from a goat. Being brand new to 4-H, we had so much to learn. She didn't... I mean, when you look at a goat, they don't look like a terribly lovable animal. They got those weird vertical eye slits. They got this. So she thought that the kid wouldn't bond with the goat. Okay, that's a mistake. A few weeks before fair, I was told by another parent to send my daughter off to ride rides after the sale because all the goats and lambs are put into one area before loading and start fighting because they aren't used to each other. This didn't sit right with me, and I felt like I would be deceiving my child. The point of our 4-H experience was for her to participate and learn how to care for livestock, not hide her from ugly parts. On the last day of fair, two of my 40-year-old friends retold their experiences of doing a pig one year each at fair. They both said that it changed fair for them and they had sad memories. The theme of fair this year was sunshine and smiles, but there were a lot of broken hearts and tears all over the fair barns. A few weeks ago, when I learned that the goats are taken from their pens and loaded in a way that is upsetting for the animals and the people watching, I started looking for another solution. We don't own land, so we couldn't keep the goat. I started asking people if I could give the goat to them so we didn't have to sell it for slaughter. I wasn't able to find a solution until the second day of fair. I'd heard back from someone that I had emailed a few days prior. It was a farm to donate my daughter's goat to where he would clear land for fire prevention. The farmer has contracts with CAL FIRE, elementary schools, and other important agencies. This resonated strongly with us as a beautiful solution since we moved here shortly before the fire. I think it's Car Fire or Cali Fire. I'm not sure. The quality on the writing is not great, and almost lost our home to it. I asked people if we could leave fair and donate him to help support farmers that do brush cleaning. They said it was too late since we were already at fair. Again, not what the terms seem to say here. And I note that the fair terms provide that right up until the sale, ownership remains with the girl. I spent the next several days poring over the fair rules looking for a way out. She was looking in the wrong place. It was in California Family Code all the time. I couldn't find anything in the rules that said how to quit once we were at the fairgrounds. Yeah, it was in the law, not the rules. The last night of fair at 9 p.m., it was time to say her final goodbyes. My daughter sobbed in her pen with her goat. It was heartbreaking. Like my friends who had only done a market animal once, I knew that this was our last time doing a market animal. The barn was mostly empty, and at the last minute, I decided to break the rules and take the goat that night and deal with the consequences later. I knew when I took it that my next steps were to make it right with the buyer and the fairgrounds. I've communicated with the buyer, Senator Brian Dahl's office. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. They bought the goat to support the community and are okay with the alternative solution of the goat getting donated to a farm that does weed abatement. Also a way to support the community, right? They said they were told that it's up to the fair, who has said that it has to be brought back and slaughtered. Our daughter lost 3 grandparents within the last year, and our family has had so much heartbreak and sadness that I couldn't bear the thought of the following weeks of sadness after the slaughter of her first livestock animal. Please help find a solution that is a happy ending for my daughter and for our community. I can understand that you have to pursue this situation in a way that discourages others from doing what I did, but please also think of what positive changes can be made for the kids. The 4-H pledge says to lead with your head and your heart. Our head and hearts told us that our animal would be important and beneficial to use the animal for fire clearing. We didn't join 4-H to make money, and we didn't take him for any monetary reasons. We just want to give him to a farm that does fire clearing and to make things right with the fair. I will pay you back for the goat and any other expenses I caused. I would like to ask for your support in finding a solution. I have been inspired to start a goat program where kids can raise goats and donate them to farmers who run fire clearing teams. So many kids were disappointed at fair when their goats didn't make weight, and some enjoyed raising the goats, but were upset that this is a terminal fair, i.e. that the goats will be killed at the end of it. I didn't fully understand that there are terminal and non-terminal fairs, and that at some fairs kids have to kill the goat that they just spent 3 months or more working with and training daily, while there are other solutions at a non-terminal fair. I'm so thankful for meat and farmers, but I'm also inspired to help our youth support farmers who do fire clearing for our communities. I hope that Shasta County District Fair will make changes to let our kids have a non-terminal option. So Uh, yeah, there's some missing text here. Support solutions in clearing land to prevent fires. They say, if the only solution is to return the goat for slaughter and barbecue meat, then I will return it so that I am not charged with a felony. Again, I don't see how that would have stuck, but okay. I hope that I will gain your support to donate our goat to a fire clearing team and to provide another valuable farming solution for our kids that care for livestock. Thank you so much again for supporting our 4-H kids and our farmers. Thank you for considering helping me find a solution to prevent my daughter's broken heart, a way to support fire management efforts, and to give other kids other options. Sincerely, the mom. Okay, so let's talk about that aspect, because one thing you learn if you're smart in law school, one thing you learn is that sometimes the legal remedy is not the best remedy, because here, I mean, this fair has some PR aspects to worry about. And here they had a clear PR win that they could have scored. Like, hey, we're going to, I mean, I actually think it would be a great idea to say, hey, let's open up a program to donate goats for fire clearing if there's a need for that, right? That seems like a possible thing, but nope. That's not what happened. Instead, they're now dealing with the entirety of the internet being angry about this, what they did to this little girl, who, as we can see, was clearly in a vulnerable place. Now, I said there was more weird with the warrant, and there's more weird with the warrant, and I don't really know what to make of this. So, we've got this, as I mentioned, we've got the affidavit, and it's got the narrative of probable cause, and then right in the middle of it, it starts saying, you are authorized to utilize additional sworn and non-sworn personnel to assist with the service of the search warrant and the collection of evidence. And I thought, that's a weird thing to put in an affidavit. And I thought, maybe this is what they're asking for. And the critical thing that I notice here is this clause right here. And this is going to be interesting because I think this is going to be a major part of the litigation. It says, due to the fact that the items to be seized include living animals, deputies shall secure the property in a humane and appropriate location, and the rightful owner of said property shall be notified of the location of the property. The property may be released to the owner upon seizure. Now, the police have a responsibility to identify who the actual owner is. But my first thought on this one was, hey, this seems to be a request for terms that's written into the affidavit. That's weird, but not part of the actual order. And then I started thinking a little bit more because this is really weird. And so I started getting right down into looking at fonts. And anytime you're looking at fonts when you're trying to read a warrant to sort things out, things have gone awry. And so one of the things I'm going to point to here is, I don't know if I can zoom in on it. We'll see if I can zoom in on it successfully well. All right, so we see here, this is from the affidavit, and it says the location. Now, notice that L. It's just a straight up and down line. Location, it's just a vertical line. Now we're going to go back to this block that is sort of inserted here, and we're going to find ourselves a nice little L. Where was that? All right. So here we've got location. It's on the far right side of the screen. And you notice that the L is not just a simple vertical line. It's got those serifs. And you can see it again in shall. And you can see as a direct comparison, look at the L's in, shall versus that L in purple. The font changed. That's real interesting, isn't it? Look at the pattern of how the 1536 prints out. And that's a pretty distinctive 1536, right? So, all right. So that's weird, right? We've got some different fonts here. Now I'm going to scroll all the way back up to the actual order portion of this. And we're going to look at this section for what's being ordered. And we're going to zoom right in again as to, because we see here that they're ordering, you are commanded to search the following. And we've got these vertical L's here, which appears to be a cut and pasted section from that. But we also have in this text we have those, and I'm just going to zoom in again. We've got those serifed L's. So I don't know what to make of this. It seems to me that it is possible that this is an error of cut and pasting, because, when we have this, again, we've got this portion here, which is the text of the order. And if we zoom in on this, we can see that same, I'm just going to find it here. We can see that same including serifed L. So this is really weird. I'm wondering if that section wasn't intended to be part of the order, and instead it ends up in the affidavit. And so we've got this really weird question on all of this as to which parts are validly in this order and which parts are validly, and whether they were able to rely on this warrant and anything in the order in the warrant in the first place. So there's going to be some complicated issues as to the disposition of this goat, and how it was dealt with after this seizure and whether that was proper. So I'm just letting you know, I don't think I've seen anybody else. There's lots of people who've done videos on this. I haven't seen anybody else talking about this aspect, and I think it's going to be a complicated subject that I don't actually have the answer to. We're going to have to hear some, we're going to have to get some testimony, and it might actually include, I don't know if this is something the officers can testify to. It might actually be that the magistrate has to get called to testify on this one, which will be funky. Yeah. All right. So there are a bunch of claims here, and we'll sort of go through them really quickly. First is the right to be secure from unreasonable searches and seizures under the Fourth Amendment. And this is against the officers. So basically, you searched our stuff and you weren't allowed to. Denial of constitutional right of due process under the 14th Amendment, which is you gave the goat back to their side without letting us argue that it was our goat, and preserving this goat to, because, I mean, when you look at it, one side is out meat, and they can get meat from somewhere else, right? They can buy goat meat on the open market from somewhere else. The other side is down a unique goat. It's going to be hard to compensate for that goat with money, although the court can certainly, pick a number on that. So that's the second cause of action. Third cause of action is, again, right to be secure from unreasonable search and seizures against some unnamed people, because they just don't know who they are. The same due process against the unnamed people, because they don't know who they are. Unreasonable search and seizure against the county, the sheriff's department, Fernandez and Duncan, which is, more of these officers there. It's so sixth cause of action is another due process. Seventh, unreasonable search and seizure against the Fair Association. And we've got conversion. So conversion is, and sorry, I think Fernandez and Duncan, I said officers. I think that's actually the Fair employees, like the people who are part of the Fair organization. So conversion, which is basically this was the little girl's goat, and they took possession of the goat, and they prevented the plaintiffs from having access to the goat by killing the goat. So that's what that one is. Another conversion against unknown people. Negligence against lots of people here, basically that they negligently breached their duties by not holding on to Cedar to allow his ownership to be determined by a noticed hearing, as the warrant requires. The warrant aspect is going to be interesting as to what actually is in the warrant. So I actually think that might be a legally arguable issue here. Apologies, but yeah, I think that is potentially an issue. Lots of people asked if this one was in there. Intentional infliction of emotional distress. They're saying, hey, you knew that this was going to cause emotional distress to this little girl. And in fact, based on the things that have come out, it seems that that was When you start saying we're going to teach responsibility to this little girl by forcing her to go through it, even if she doesn't want to, those are bad facts, folks. That's not something I'd want to put in front of a judge if I was them. They're also asking for some things that I don't think they can properly get. One thing that I think they can is declaratory relief, saying they want to have a declaration that they're allowed to back out of contracts. And the court may be entirely fine with saying, okay, I'm willing to give a declaration that the law exists, right? Fair enough. But they're also asking for a declaration that, and I'll just sort of pull this up in the prayer for relief here, that they can't retaliate or otherwise discriminate against this girl's free expression or viewpoint with respect to livestock in future livestock activities. Now, I don't know if they can I don't think that this is something that the court is actually going to grant. And the reason why I say that is that there's certain kinds of remedies that the court is good at giving. Typically money is what they're best at giving, but sometimes people want other remedies. And one of the really common places where this comes up is in the employment law situation. Like, let's say I get fired by a company and I think that they wrongly fired me and I want to sue them and I want to sue them for my job back. Well, the court's not going to order them to employ you. That's just not on the table. They'll give you money to compensate for this, but they will not give you your job back. That's not an available remedy. Similarly, they probably won't order that you get, that they have to say nice things about you or that kind of thing. So these are, I don't know that this is a remedy that they can actually get. But things they do ask for, they ask for damages in terms of their actual damages, general and special damages. So that'll include pain and suffering and so forth. Punitive damages. And punitive damages are basically screw you money. Punitive damages are the court saying you suck and you suck so bad that we want to make you pay extra money for sucking so that you will suck less in future. Maybe. And so that other people will learn the lesson that if you suck, it'll cost money. It is specifically screw you money for your actions are so egregious that not only do you have to repay for the damages you inflicted, be those, physical, like actual value or pain and suffering or that kind of thing, but just over and above that, we just want to hurt you. We think that you deserve some pain. This is the find out damages in the whole F around and find out. This is find out money is what they're asking for here. And the court may decide to give it to them if they can make out their complaint. So that's a possibility. They're also asking for attorney's fees and costs. And there's always this clause of such further relief as may be permitted by law and / or that this court deems equitable, just, and proper. So that is basically their wish list. That's what they're asking for. As I said, I don't think they're going to get everything that they're asking for, but if they can make out the stuff in their complaint, and, I'm going to repeat this once again, it's just a complaint at this point. We don't have depositions. We don't have affidavits other than the one on the warrant. We don't have any of that stuff. This is still sort of an emerging news story. But if they can make out all of this stuff, it seems to me that they should get paid. And I'm kind of expecting that they'll get paid. This is going to be a case I want to follow. This is going to be a case I want to do some following up on because I can tell you, I had people reach out to me about this case, including people who are like, I am a goat farmer. I raise goats for meat. And F these guys. I've had people reach out saying, I've done 4-H work I've volunteered with this and done stuff with them for years. And I hate this story. I've had lots of people. And I'm just going to say, this is not the side of the story I expected to be on because I hunt. I eat meat. I support that we have meat industries and these kinds of things. The people who are sort of the lawyers behind this, we don't have a whole lot of common cause, in the sense that I probably disagree with them on a lot of the animal rights issues. But here I am doing a video saying, I think on this one they're right. And also going so far as to say, and I'll say it again, if you got some spare money, maybe throw it their way, because they're fighting what appears to be the good fight on this one. And again, anytime you're doing social interest law, like anything where you're fighting for a cause and not just fighting for dollars, you're probably doing it for no money. And here they're doing it for, on a shoestring budget. So I'm going to link them in the description below. Ship them some dollars if you can. In Cedar the goat's memory. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, a lot of people are real upset about this one, and people you wouldn't expect. I think this is a major PR blunder. It just is what it is. This is kind of a big Streisand effect one. People are sharing this all over, and I'm going to ask you, share this video, because I've got some details in here that I think no one else has covered. And yeah, if you want to see more of this kind of stuff, please like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe to see more content. I also want to thank my $50 supporters, the CCFR, Canada's National Firearms Association, and the Canadian Shooting Sports Association. At the $30 level, Sights and Arms Limited, Jane Babe and Luxor, and David Michaud. And at the $20 level, Lindsay Metcalf, Kyle Fox, Haywire, Gerald to the Bailey, Cameron Johnson, Andrew Elsich, and Vicky. Thank you as well to my $10 supporters who will be in the crawl immediately following. Thank you for watching. I hope this has armed you with knowledge. See you next time.